Hello, Hollywood Times fans and viewers. I'm Virginia Schneider, and I am here very proud and honored to introduce our guests today, Josh Tickell and Rebecca Tickell. These two are the documentary geniuses of the United States. They have so many film festival laurels. I think I lost count at over 24 film festival laurels for the documentaries that you have won, and over 24 film festivals all over the world, including Sundance, Cannes, Telluride, Stockholm, so many more. Your research in studying the environment in terms of soil rejuvenation, in terms of the planet, in terms of global warming, you guys have been written up in publications all over the world: MSNBC, National Geographic, Forbes, Popular Science, Consumer Reports, NPR. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We are so fortunate to have such experts in the environment and in what's going on in our planet today, is to have you all as our guests. And for those of you who haven't seen some of their earlier films, I'm just going to mention Pump, which was about the American addiction to oil and some fuel alternatives. Big Fix was about the 2010 BP oil spill. You had Fuel, which won Best Doc at Sundance Film Festival. Kiss the Ground, which was narrated by Woody Harrelson, which is about, if I can pronounce this right, bioequestation. It's about rejuvenating the soil in very healthy ways. I am so excited when I saw your latest documentary called Regenerate Ojai. It's this horrible story about pesticides in California, where we grow so many of our crops and plants for the rest of the world. So tell us about what's going on here and how this project got started.
I think it began for us when we decided to move to Ojai from Los Angeles to come to this bucolic town. It's a farming community. We thought many people move here to get away from the city life, to have some fresh, clean air, and to raise a family. So that's exactly why we came here. And we quickly discovered that there's a tremendous amount of pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide spraying, kind of the nexus of some of the worst agrochemical use in the country, right here in our backyard. And it started when a helicopter flew past our house and sprayed a neighbor's orchard. And minutes later, suddenly us and our two children, who at the time I think were 4 and 6, started sneezing, started coughing, really couldn't breathe. And we had to jump in our car and leave. And then that was only the first time. The second time it happened, our daughter was at a park and they were spraying all around the park and in the riverbed. And we were told, no, there were no signs, but here were these people in protective gear spraying glyphosate, Roundup, into the watershed. And we were told it was safe for our daughter to sit in the water that had just been sprayed. And ironically, while we were experiencing these things literally in our backyard, we were making a film called Kiss the Ground that talks about how we can shift the climate crisis, draw down all of the carbon that we've emitted into the atmosphere since pre-industrial time through increasing soil health. It's called biosequestration. It's when you draw down carbon from the air and you put it back into the soil where it came from. And by increasing soil organic matter and improving soil health, not only do you help reverse climate change by reversing all the CO2 in the atmosphere, but you also grow nutrient-dense food. You create safe, sustainable farming practices that, because people, when they work in these fields, they're exposed to these chemicals. So we were making this film that dealt with it on a global level. And this film had a massive impact in terms of our federal policies around farming. I mean, it's King Charles's favorite documentary. But then right here where we live, it turns out that it was the worst farming practices. So in our spare time and, with all of our extra cash, we're environmental documentary filmmakers. So it's not like we have a lot of either of those things. We could not ignore what was happening in our backyard. And that is how this film was created. It was so that we don't have to move, so that our community is safe, and so that our children are safe.
And I'll just add, Ojai is in many ways representative of California's incredible history. We've got this state, obviously, that was settled long before Europeans and others came here, with an incredible indigenous population who practiced agriculture. A lot of people just think that they fished, and they actually managed landscapes, as we're learning now more and more. And, here today, fast forward, through the orange groves that used to take up much of Los Angeles and Hollywood, even Orange County, this was the agricultural mega state for quite a while. It still is. And so now we have this interesting fusion of, storytellers, filmmakers, and agriculture. We've got some oil and gas and some other things in there, but really the big industries, if you look at California, it's Hollywood and food. And what's interesting about Ojai is, of course, this is a beloved town. Many people have come here through the years, incredible storytellers. People have weekend homes here. Hollywood has had a vested interest in Ojai for many years. But suddenly, in this new time, post-COVID, post the Thomas Fire, that was a big deal here in Ojai, we're seeing this nexus of population, farming, and climatological issues, right? So water has gotten much more expensive. The climate is more brittle, right? Hotter summers, wetter winters. And so plants have to be much more resilient to withstand these pressures. And of course, when you have a lot of pressures, pests show up. So this wonderful orange that California has invested in, that is not native to California, that we brought here and that we propagated our fields with, that orange tree and those citrus trees are getting hit with hard temperatures, difficult water situations, and the soil that we farmed here in California for quite a while has turned to dust because the farmers really didn't know a lot about soil management, soil health. You can go into any orange grove, pretty much with the exception of a few regenerative and a few organic groves, and you could pick it up. There's no soil left. It's dust. It's just dust.
I noticed that it's an amazing documentary, Regenerate Ojai. We're going to put the link in here. Everybody should see it. It's 30 minutes. Every 30 seconds, there's a new piece of information. You guys have got so much scientific evidence behind all of your work. I think it was over 24 different documented research studies. And you also had a lot of research references from National Geographic and other publications all over the world to support everything you've done. You've got all the information right here. There's so many facts, but yet you spell it out so clearly in this documentary. Your website has these amazing graphics that just very easily talk about it. So talk about some of these horrendous figures in here about the pounds of chemicals that residents of Ojai are ingesting into their system. What is this?
Well, first, I just want to say it's not just Ojai. California, especially Ventura County, Oxnard, and the Central Valley of California that goes all the way up the middle of California. Most people in Los Angeles and San Francisco just drive on the 5. Well, there's another highway called the 99, which goes up the middle. That middle is the largest gross receipts producer of agriculture in the nation, right? So all the things doctors tell us we should be eating more of, fruits, vegetables, all that stuff, most of it comes from California. But there's a tremendous cost to pay. And that's why we made this film. Is there's bad news about it, and there's a potential solution as well. We happen to see all of those things happening in this town of Ojai. But I do want to emphasize, it's not just here. It's actually all of California that faces this.
Even Santa Barbara, where people think, this isn't happening, and parts of Los Angeles too. Everybody is exposed, whether it's through the food that they're eating or whether it's because they're driving by this beautiful farm. Pesticides don't just sit where they're sprayed. They will volatilize volatilize into the air, and then they'll drift, and they will drift for miles, and they'll drift for many days. So whenever you have a farm, you have often schools and houses that are near these farms. And when people live or go to school or work near these farms, studies show that they're being exposed to extremely unsafe levels of neurotoxins that are being sprayed. So just here where we live, they're spraying about 75 times per month.
Which is insane to me. That's more than twice a day.
Yeah, it's about 3 times a day.
On average. I mean, some days are more, some days are less, depending on wind conditions, weather,
And we want to mention that Ojai is, it's about 75 miles north of Los Angeles. So this is a place that people will come on the weekends for a beautiful drive or visit, but it's actually the weekends when most of the spraying is happening. So people will go outside to enjoy a beautiful day, and they don't realize that there is a strong chance that in the wind, that nice smelling, orange grove wind, that there is likely neurotoxins laced in that air. And we've unfortunately experienced that firsthand.
You show a video of these mammoth, they're like World War II era, huge fans, just blowing this stuff out. And thank you very much. You also represent the indigenous Native Americans and also the farm workers who are extremely exposed because they're usually the ones that are working the land. So I'm going to ask, you point this out in the documentary, but I was talking to a friend and they asked this question. So I want to ask it here so you can emphasize it again. Why Ojai in terms of the geographic land? It's a valley, right?
I mean, all of Ventura County and, like Josh said, California are experiencing different degrees of this. And in the Oxnard Plain, they're actually spraying way more than what's being sprayed in Ojai. But the difference between the Oxnard Plain and the Ojai Valley is that in the Oxnard Plain, it's flat and it's open. So there's a wind that will come in and blow through. Unfortunately, most of these farms are surrounded by neighborhoods and schools. And so they're breathing this in, and this has been going on for decades and decades. But here in the Ojai Valley, we have a really unique topography. We're a valley that's shaped like a bowl. And then we have this low inversion layer. And so the industry line is the solution to pollution is dilution. But unfortunately, where we live, there is no place for that pollution to go except into our bodies, into our ecosystem, into our rivers and streams and our environment. So we're having a much higher rate of exposure here because it's bioaccumulating in our environment and in our bodies.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
A couple of things for folks to keep in mind is, these sprays that they're using, they're mostly to combat pests. So a little bug called the Asian citrusillid that's attacking the orange trees because the trees are weak, because the soil is weak, because it hasn't been taken care of, right? So the bug has infrared vision. So it just looks for the weakest trees, and that's what it goes after. Well, as this pest pressure has gone up, so too has the number of gallons and the intensity of the neurotoxin. It's a neurotoxin, so it attacks the brainstem. That's how it works in a bug. That's how it works in a human. So in Ojai, we're seeing a lot of dead dogs after they spray. We're seeing a lot of paralysis in animals that are close to the ground after they spray.
And people.
And we're seeing clusters of people that have either non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, ALS, the shakes, the farmer shakes is what they call it. A lot of the older farmers have the shakes. Parkinson's disease,
breast cancer.
These type of more rare cancers tend to be clustered around the farms. So folks will come to Ojai, they'll smell that. It's like a sickly sweet type smell, often on the weekends because schools are out of session. They don't want to do it as much during school, which is good, but that's when people are outside. So we get exposed, and of course it affects the people. We've had numerous people report to us they have partial paralysis after being exposed to a spray in their neighborhood. As you said, these are huge fan sprayers. This is not precision agriculture. They're not going up to a tree and swabbing the tree. It's just blowing this stuff everywhere. In fact, the Farm Bureau used to have on its front page the World War II fan sprayer. That was the Welcome to Ventura County Farm Bureau. Now they changed it after the film, of course. Oh, we never had that on our page. Yeah, but they did. We took a screenshot. So this is just the mentality. Of course, you mentioned, Native Americans, indigenous people, and of course, Hispanic, Latinx workers. You don't see a lot of white guys out on these tractors blowing this neurotoxin everywhere. It's generally a Hispanic worker. It's generally somebody who is whose immigration status may be at question, so they're not going to report the issue. And of course, when you look into the families of these workers, we're seeing across the board children with unbelievable conditions, lymphoma, leukemia, I mean, you name it, stuff that occurs 1 in 100,000. We're seeing 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 families.
Yeah, and if you're a field worker
Yeah.
child, it's really the numbers are really high.
Learning disabilities,
Yeah.
all across the board. And so,
Yeah.
whether you want to say, well, that's completely disconnected, this could never happen in America, the studies show otherwise. And there are over 150 peer-reviewed studies on the connection between childhood developmental disease and the specific neurotoxins that they're spraying in Ojai, in the San Joaquin Valley, in Ventura County. So we're spraying this statewide. Of course, if you live in the city, you're protected. That's what you're thinking. Guess where the toxins go? Onto the food that you eat. So it's the apple, it's the burrito, it's even the meat because it goes up the food chain. So really the big deal here is the film is a call to action, to change. We want farmers to be profitable. We want them to stay on their land. We want workers to be taken care of. We want families to be safe and children to be protected, regardless of their race and their color. And we can do that, as the film shows, through a new form of agriculture, which is actually an old form called regenerative agriculture. Makes the soil healthy, produces more food per acre, so farmers can make more money, and it takes less water.
I wanted to touch on that. Again, this is one of the many things that this documentary talks about. And you interviewed, I think, at least 3 or 4 different farmers that I counted. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is in the process and how it works?
Regenerative agriculture, basically, it's farming the way that nature intended. So if you look at the way that indigenous people would practice agriculture, there were never any chemical sprays. They weren't going and tilling the soil. It was a much more natural, holistic approach. So you're going to have biodiversity. You're not going to have monocrops. So monocrops is when you just plant one thing over and over and over again, and you're not taking into account the well-being of the soil. So in a regenerative system, you're going to have all types of food that's grown there, but that food is going to be grown in context to the environment. So it's going to be food that would naturally grow in that area. You're not going to be growing oranges in a place where oranges wouldn't naturally grow. And the other thing about regenerative agriculture is that it involves animals. Animals are naturally going to be in those farms, and they're going to be doing what animals do best, which is fertilizing the soil, eating up the weeds and stimulating life in that soil. The ground is going to be covered at all times. You're not going to see any bare ground. You're not going to see dust blowing up into the wind. And the benefit of this is that not only are you drawing down tons and tons of carbon and building that really rich, dense topsoil, you're also able to store water like a sponge. And here in California, we've been having a drought, and we believe that that drought is caused by the way we've been farming our land. We've been degrading the soil by ripping up the soil, putting in these monocrops, spraying it with chemicals, tilling it each year, taking animals out of the equation. And so when you do that, there's no way for that soil to store water. And when you do that, you affect the small water cycle. And in the case of California, it's the large water cycle. So we can actually reverse that. We can heal the drought by how we grow our food. And how we do that is by building soil organic matter, building topsoil, bringing life back into the earth. And the amazing thing is, when you have life in the earth, you have that mycorrhizal network in the soil. The trees and the plants, they all communicate. They're able to take, oh, it's like, oh, this plant over here has something that this plant over here has, and they're able to exchange the nutrients and the minerals that they need so that they're able to naturally have resiliency. It's resilient against fires. It's resilient against pests. It's resilient against drought. So the main problems that we face here, we really can solve with regenerative agriculture. And the other benefit of it, it really is a win, is that it's profitable for the farmer because suddenly they're not dependent on one crop. Suddenly they have this whole biodiverse environment that's going to naturally be resistant to the things that they're using all of these inputs to try to prevent. And they're finding that within year one, over 80% of farmers who transition to this type of agriculture are making a profit.
That is unbelievable. So tell me, are the farmers that you interviewed in here, because you guys really cover this documentary, I'm going to say it again, Regenerate Ojai. Please watch it. It's only 30 minutes. You cover how all of this works in terms of, very clearly, if you have the soil is bad, the crops are bad. If the crops are bad, you're spraying, you're complicating the problem. But these farmers that I saw, it was so clearly illustrated what they were doing, and you could just see the matter turn around in their hands. So we know what the problem is. We have solutions for them. So where's the resistance? And if so, what can we do to water that down?
Yeah, well, look, no one likes to be told that they're doing something the wrong way, especially if they've been doing it for generations, right? We have a frog slowly boiling in water scenario where these pesticides have gotten far more dangerous. They've gotten far greater in terms of the quantity needed to achieve the result. And the pressures have gone up. So slowly ratcheting up this difficulty, these pressures on this farming community. And slowly, they've made concessions to be able to keep farming the same way. The biggest motivator is profit, is money, right? There are generational farmers who are, the average age of a farmer in the United States is in their 70s. So not generally people who want to change everything, who want to risk the farm on a newfangled idea, right? But what we are seeing is a young generation of farmers coming into places like Ojai, where most of the farms are going up for sale. You know, this is a tough business and it's getting tougher. Most of the orange farmers here will say that they think they're going to be out of business in 10 or 15 years anyway, due to water prices, due to all the pressures that we just talked about. So I think one of the big areas of hope rests with young people. And one of the other big areas of hope rests with education, farm days, where farmers are allowed to come onto the regenerative farms, take a look, realize, wow, you're producing not just oranges, but you produce honey and bacon and all these other crops and all these other products, and you're making all this money per acre versus me and my one crop that just could get wiped out.
Right.
That kind of showing the systems and how, yeah, maybe it takes some adjustment, but it's not that much harder. And at the end of the day, everyone's healthier. That education is really powerful. So I think it's getting young folks here in California farming, getting them access to land, getting them access to grants and ways that they can get involved, and plain old education.
Right, which your website is really great at doing. I have to say, you make it so easy for people to just follow along and understand. So in terms of this documentary, how long has it been out, and what are the plans to, I mean, you're making it free for people to watch. So there's no excuse for not watching it. It's so good. It's so good.
It's narrated by Laura Dern. I mean, we have Academy Award-winning actress Laura Dern's incredible voice narrating the film. Her mom was actually a resident of Ojai, and as you see in the film, her dog went out and came back in with some pesticide residue on her paws, and she had a seizure and died, unfortunately. And so many people have been experiencing their own their own crisis from exposure here. But the reason that we put it on YouTube, the reason we made it free, this January, actually, that we had a town hall meeting here in Ojai. We made it free for our community. So many people that we know are dealing with cancer. They're dealing with health problems as a result of exposure. So we just wanted to make sure to get this out as soon as possible to as many people as possible, which is why we're so grateful to you for covering this and to you for watching today. Share it. It's on YouTube. It's called Regenerate Ojai. The website is regenerateojai.com. And then we also have other films that talk about the bigger issue, the carbon cycle, how we can reverse climate change through agriculture. We made a film called Kiss the Ground. That's on Netflix. It's also free. There's an educational version that's free. You can get that through kissthegroundmovie.com. And pretty much all of our work touches on this issue in some way or another. But the amazing, the other thing we haven't really mentioned is that when we eat food that's grown regeneratively, we're also getting nutrient-dense food. So much of the food that we eat that's grown in dead dirt doesn't have the ability to pull that nutrition up through its roots because it's lost that connection to soil and to the earth, and there's no life in that soil. So when we're eating food that's devoid of the nutrition that our bodies need. And we're facing a health epidemic across the country where people are getting sick because of a lack of nutrition and also eating all of these ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
So we have an opportunity not only to heal our environment and to heal the people who are growing our food, but also to heal our bodies. If we can heal the earth can heal us through the types of food that we eat. And I feel like Regenerate Ojai does a great job at showing that, as does our film Kiss the Ground, that talks about the bigger issue globally.
And Kiss the Ground, which you said is on Netflix, that's the one that's narrated by Woody Harrelson. And I only bring that up because he also mentions, you guys talk about so many different issues in there. And I think you said that you've got an upcoming project. Give us a little teaser about that.
Spoiler alert, there is a sequel film to Kiss the Ground coming. And we don't want to tell viewers yet what it's called, but it is even bigger and even more fun than Kiss the Ground, with more information and people that you'll recognize who are doing a great job at explaining how we can shift America's food system and our farm bill in time this year to really make a difference in everything from our school kids' lunches to what we're eating, to what we're breathing, to the water. So that big film's coming hopefully this year.
It also shows what's holding us back.
Yeah.
You asked, why aren't farmers making the change? So as equally hopeful as that film is, it also goes into what's not working about our broken food system and how we can fix it.
And I'll just say this for folks watching Regenerate Ojai, especially here in California, Ventura County, even in the San Joaquin Valley, we love to see some, one of our calls to action is to some of the big companies in this area. So whether it's a Sunkist that is packaging those oranges and selling that orange juice all across the country, selling those oranges in Japan, or whether it's some of the other big brands that have their housing, their employees live here in Ventura County, they work here, their kids go to school here. If you're one of those big companies, if you're running that company or you're working on that company, get in touch with Regenerate Ojai and help us regenerate Ojai and Ventura and eventually all of California, because you have a stake in this. That's your bottom line. And there are some very, very big companies here, even some green companies that aren't hip to this issue yet. And you need to get on board, help protect farm workers, help protect our soil, help protect our families, and help protect our air.
Yeah, we could go from being the Cancer Valley, which is what we currently are, to being the Emerald Valley. We can be a model for how going from the worst types of farming practices with degenerated soil and cancer clusters to being a model for how to regenerate the land and how we can really climb our way out of this climate crisis that we've found ourselves in, that's largely caused by how we grow food.
Right. And I think that it spells out very, very well in your documentary how a farmer, young farmers, new farmers, even if they're small farmers, this is something that can be put into practice in any by a lot of farmers, and they've broken it down into real easy steps. So again, I'm just going to say, anybody who wants to know what's going on in the breadbasket of America, this is really important. Just for numerous reasons, I can't begin to tell you how much this documentary illustrates, and even things like you're talking about people that are growing bees, and how people are using different types of soil growth. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think one of the facts I was looking at that was so frightening to me, and I want to make sure that I put this in context, but 52% of children in America are born with some type of birth defect, and they're tracing this to the kind of not only food that they're eating, but this kind of environment that they're living in. And about 75% of rain has trace amounts of Roundup.
Yeah.
Roundup.
Yeah.
So it's coming all over. It's coming all over.
It is. Look, we're all affected. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water. At this point, these endocrine disruptors are entering the food system in quantities this is the greatest human experiment. We're guinea pigs in a huge experiment now, right? So let's start locally to address these issues. These are serious issues. When you talk about kids having these issues at a young age, at childbirth, we're talking about cells that are reproducing. So those cells are far more apt to damage. And when one cell is damaged, it multiplies, right? So we're seeing studies that are looking at in utero issues, not just diabetes. In utero diabetes has shot off the charts, right? But now it's across the board. This all starts, believe it or not, here in California. We produce the majority of the nation's fruits, vegetables, and nuts. And some people will make a joke about that, but it is true. So let's start here. Let's fix our food system, get our farmers to be profitable, and protect. I mean, we need to protect moms, and we need to protect kids from this too.
And we need, there's three things that I can think of ways that people can participate.
Okay.
One, we really need to change our state laws. We need to start with notification. There's no transparency when these chemicals are sprayed. People need to be notified if they're going to potentially be exposed to any of these neurotoxins, these neonicotinoids, the pyrethroids, the abamectin, all these things that are hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors, neurotoxins. We should have the right to know if we're about to breathe that in, and at least be able to close our windows and doors and have the choice whether we want to be there or not. That's the first thing. We need notification. That's step one. Step two, we need to make sure that when we are voting with our dollars every time we buy food, that we're supporting the people who are doing it right, the people who are building their soil, the regenerative organic farmers. It's important that it's regenerative and organic. That's how we save our soil, and that's how we save California. That's really how we save the whole world. So how we can do that is we can look for labels that say regenerative organic. We can also talk to farmers at farmers markets and make sure that the food that we're buying is supporting that type of agriculture. Okay. And then the third way is that we can participate by growing our own food. Even if you just have a small backyard, you can participate by planting pollinators, flowers, and then you can also actually grow food. You'd be surprised at what one tomato plant can grow and produce. Or, we can all participate in some small way. If we were to rip out all of those lawns and start instead growing these victory gardens in our backyard, we can produce so much food, even within our own neighborhood. There's a great example of that in San Diego. It's called Good Neighbor Gardens, where they've started planting food in the backyard and providing whole communities with food that's grown locally, regeneratively, organically. So we can all participate in the food system, even if it's just in a window box. But there's an opportunity for us all to vote each time we buy food, with growing food ourselves, and also letting our policymakers in Sacramento know that we want to be notified.
Well, and I want to refer everybody one more time. Please go to regenerateojai.com. Watch this amazing documentary about what's going on in the breadbasket of America. And also for more information about all of your projects and a big background of environmental issues, go to your website, bigpictureranchfilms.com, right?
Bigpictureranch.com.
Bigpictureranch.com. Thank you all for being with me today. You're wonderful. I wish you all the best of luck. This is great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day.